Hi, Dr. Rob.
Tammy, always a pleasure.
Likewise. So the first question we have, so for those of you joining us, put your questions in. We usually run out of time, so get them in early. My SAPA husband just hit 1 year sobriety date, working step 4, has a great CSAT, 3+ meetings a week, communicating and showing empathy, also starting to show consistency in behavior issues such as compulsive lying. He was recommended to a Help or Heal group for couples. He asked me to do this and listed all the positive things he's heard about it. I reluctantly joined because I felt like a fool. I shared vulnerability and spoke to a few women on the phone. After a few meetings, he tells me he doesn't feel comfortable with the women in the group. He says he doesn't want to be praised by them for his shares and says he doesn't want to trigger me by getting validation from other women. This sounds like a narcissistic response to me. I asked if it's truly because he's worried about objectifying them. He says absolutely not. I'm not so sure. What does it seem like the real issue is? Could he be uncomfortable being open in front of women, but didn't know it until that happened? That's a complex question.
I've
So
gotten
what are
that
your
before.
thoughts? Yeah.
Well, it doesn't sound narcissistic to me. It sounds like good recovery. And maybe he isn't sitting in there, intensely staring at other women and being in that kind of, lostness that we get into, which is part of the addiction. Maybe he just feels uncomfortable hearing what some of the women have to say. Maybe that triggers him and he thinks about it later. Maybe it triggers him into shame around how he's harmed you. So, which by the way, just at Seeking Integrity at the treatment center, it's fascinating because all the spouses send in letters that Tammy and I get and work on, and well, I work on them in treatment. And they're letters from the spouses about what's happened to you, what you've been hurting about, what you've been struggling about, all those kinds of things. We really get to hear it. And what's not unusual is if I'm reading my spouse's letter and talking about the ways they may have hurt me, I think I've heard all that before. And so it doesn't sound like anything I need to deal with, or she told me that, or whatever that is. But I'll tell you what, the other men in the room are really, really moved because it isn't their spouse. It isn't their partner. And oftentimes the other guys, I've seen men sitting there weeping, not necessarily in the way they could for their spouse because they're kind of shut down there, but listening how one of us hurt another one of you. And so I don't know why he would feel uncomfortable. There could be a million reasons. But to me, taking myself out of a situation where I feel uncomfortable is a good recovery step. Um, Maybe he isn't worried about objectifying them. Maybe he doesn't think about that, but doesn't mean occasionally he doesn't. In the world, we all see people, so they could be anywhere if we're going to objectify him. But if I were him, I wouldn't be comfortable being open in front of women, other women. You said he hit his 1 year sobriety. He's working on step 4. That's really early. And I don't know. I'm at that point, I'm barely getting used to being open around men and really sharing my experience with them. I don't know if I would feel safe in a group of women who were talking about their emotional and issues. It's not that I don't want to hear it. It just, I might not be ready to hear it. So I think there are many, many reasons, but even if he is objectifying them and is leaving because he is, even if he lied to you and said he wasn't objectifying when he was, it's not irrelevant. But the good news is he got out of there. And to me, that speaks to the recovery, is that he found himself unhappy, uncomfortable with something, and he just took himself out of that situation. And that's something we teach all the time. So yeah, Tammy, what are your thoughts?
I have a little different view of this. So first of all, I want to go back to the part where you share, I reluctantly joined because I feel like a fool. I'm
Hmm.
like, that hurts me. Because I'm like, it feels like you're taking on shame for his addiction, his brokenness, his condition, and but then I hear I shared vulnerability and spoke to a few women on the phone, and I'm going like, how did you feel about that? Like, to
Good for
me,
you.
that would be, yeah, to me that's like good, because if you're sharing your vulnerability and speaking to partners need support from other partners. I mean, I'm glad your husband is doing the work, but and you're seeing some progress, great. But you deserve and need support, as well,
Hmm.
from other women who have been through this. And
Right.
then The other thing I noticed, or I was thinking about, and I don't know your husband. I don't know what, really is going on. And I hear Dr. Robin, all of that could be true. The other thing, I'm like, well, I could go to a meeting and say, if like, I'm going to share this, and he could feel like, the fake, like I'm getting praise from all these women, and they don't really know me. They don't know how badly I've hurt my wife, and they don't, so he sounds good, but he may be going to that place of like, that's not really who I am. I'm not that good yet, so that was one of the other aspects I, wondered about. And I, again, have like, I have no idea what's really going on, but being uncomfortable is part of recovery too. So if it's a safe place, he could also say to the women, to the group, I'm only looking for feedback from the men. I'm not, for my recovery, I need only input from men, or whatever. I mean, there's ways to set it up that could be different, but if it's helpful for you, like if you can get over I feel like a fool, but go, gosh, these people are validating. Now, the other thing for you, we have multiple betrayed partner drop-in groups every week. I'm glad you're here. But we have multiple betrayed partner drop-in groups that are safe places, for you to share vulnerably, with other betrayed partners too. And then we have the same thing for him too. So I don't know if it's a timing issue. It feels like, some of what he's saying, there may be threads of that that are true. But it also feels like he may not even be able to identify really all of the layers of what's going on for him, and just be uncomfortable. So interesting. I would hone in on, he's got his 1 year sobriety. He's doing some work. You're seeing some progress. And I would really invite you to get the support, so that you are not feeling foolish or shamed, or, and just feeling supported.
I wanted to add something to that. Sorry, I think I pressed the wrong button, and now the heat's on. It's 110 in here. So I haven't, we have a new, one of those thermostat. I can't figure that thing out. So I wrote down, I completely understand and hear all the time how incredibly humiliating it is to have someone you care about betray you in such a profound way. And you should be, I often hear like, why didn't I know? Or I should have known, and all that kind of stuff. But I don't think if he had cancer that you would feel humiliated going to a cancer support group. And I know that this isn't like that, but on some level it is. And I wrote these words down because if you see me look down, I'm not on my phone, I'm writing. And I said, it's not about you, but it affects you. This isn't anything that you did right or wrong. You had, and I say this all the to you could have made a very miserable relationship for this man, and he could have left you. The logical solution isn't to to masturbate or have affairs and all that. That was a decision he made. So I understand, I really do, the degree of foundation breaking experience it is to be betrayed. And as Tammy said, if you can just take that little piece out, which is, it's my fault, which leads to I'm humiliated. You didn't do anything wrong. You just love somebody who's really broken. And I consider that reasonably admirable. So thanks, Tammy. What do we got?
Okay, so the next one, I'm the addict in our relationship. I have recently been trying to understand the why of my behaviors. I'm in a 12-step program and have a year of healthy recovery, and I'm beginning to understand my emotions and feelings, and I'm sharing these with my wife. I feel so much better about life and its opportunities. My wife, on the other hand, is having a really hard time believing that I could change so drastically, and is very reluctant to accept the new me. I would like to know how to be her knight in shining armor through this process.
So I wrote a book called Out of the Doghouse, a relationship saving guide for men caught cheating. And we teach an out of the doghouse course. And I'm not trying to pitch anything. This is something you really need to read because I always worry about our motivations in the beginning. And when you say in one note, I want to be her knight in shining armor, and then you say I'm understanding my emotions and I'm sharing with them with her, I don't think they should be related. when you're a partnership, you should automatically be sharing your issues with your partner. So I don't think that you get, and I worry about this knight in shining armor. That's not your job. Your job is
Mhm.
to be is the word husband?
Mhm.
Be a kind, respectful, consistent, engaged, recovering, honest partner. That is the knight in shining armor that she wants to see, especially the honest part. You want to polish your armor, do it out in the world where you get a lot of attention for the work you do, or drive a fancy car if your narcissism needs to be fed in that way. But I don't want to be adored. And I don't want someone to look at me and say, and I don't want a gold star, like, you're doing so well, sweetheart, that I really want to be more open to you. The two things are not related. You do this work for you. You don't do it for her. And if in the process she happens to feel better about you or more encouraged, by the way, knight in shining armor, I would just check that off the list. Like, that ain't going to happen, especially after what's been going on. There was one other thing I wanted to say. Oh, about her reluctancy to take this in. So, and Tammy can talk more about this than me. Y'all are in different places. You've known about this forever. You knew what you did, where you were going, you know what you were lying about. But this is probably reasonably recent for your spouse. So you've had years to look at what the problem is, and now you're really starting to dive into the resolution. She's had what, how long? A year, 18 months to figure out that there's a problem. She's going to take a long time to get into a more peaceful place. So I suggest you take your eyes off of her and put your eyes back on your sponsor and your program and your therapy and your recovery. And if she wants to talk to you about something, she can come to you. By the way, I don't have to, I'm sorry, Tammy, I'm ranting. I don't have to tell my spouse, well, guess what I did today? And I went to this meeting and I did that. Again, it's not about getting a gold star for doing minimum requirements of recovery. I see guys who, now I'm doing the laundry and now I'm helping with dinner and now I'm with the kids. And it's like, well, but you just should have been doing that all along. You don't get big kudos for that. So I think two things are being conflated. One is what I hope is your sincere and meaningful shift in your life. And I know what that's like, to go from lying and cheating and keeping secrets and to just being me, to having integrity. And I'm so happy for you. By the way, this will wane and wax, meaning there will be times when you feel great about your recovery, and just be aware there will be times that you don't. It goes in and out. So enjoy the good times. And then there's going to be other feelings and it's going to be hard. But I suggest you leave her alone, and maybe you take a course or read a book on what betrayed partners go through. There, Tammy?
So, a bunch of things. Yeah, the knight in shining armor is, um,
Oh, there's a
yeah, so,
book called A Knight in Shining Armor. I'm going to send that. You talk, I'll send
okay.
it to him.
So I just typed in the Thanos check-in. What I hear is you're sharing with your wife. You're sharing with your wife, and she, I don't know what kind of a format you guys have. You may have a check-in where you're both sharing. Great. If it's like you're, constantly running around and telling her things, like, that's a lot, especially for someone who's been betrayed. So having the filter on that, having the conversation of like, how is it, how best to appropriately, if you're doing like the 20-minute meetings a couple times a week, that's a great place, to share those kind of things too. But I mean, partners are overwhelmed, with all of this, because like Dr. Rob said, you knew all along that you were doing all of this stuff, and then partners get bam, and their whole world is upset. They are often, 12 to 18 months behind the partner in that, or the addict, if the addict is doing the right things, and I mean really engaging in recovery work. When I hear the focus of like, how can I be her knight in shining armor, like, that is taking the focus off of you and the recovery work. The why, yeah, I mean,
Right.
fine, it's helpful maybe, but I know lots of people who know why and keep acting out. It can also be really triggering. So make sure you've got the support. I always think the better question is how do we move forward? How do we move forward? How do I engage my recovery plan, so that we are making progress? That's far more interesting to me than the why. Like I said, know lots of people who know why, and they they act out for years and decades. So making sure you really have a solid foundation. If you haven't already done so, I put the work groups, out of the doghouse is a great option. If you've got a solid foundation, it sounds like you do. You've got hopefully you're working with a sponsor. At 12 months, the other person was like starting step 4 to me as a 12 stepper, like that's a longer journey. Get through, steps 4 through 9 are where things really change. So if you've got those solid foundation, you can go back and do it again. Guess what? You keep living this life and you keep doing those things. So, but getting through a core of that is such a relief. So hopefully you've been doing those things, to be able to be present, but, giving her the space, hopefully she's, participating, you being her sole support and like saving her, no, you do your work, she gets her support, and then, as things, are able to do so, you're coming together at strategic points like the Thanos check-in. So
I have so much more that I keep adding, by
okay.
the way. So Tammy's right. It's not, everybody wants to know why. Why do I have this problem? Why do I do this? Why? And to be honest, that's kind of in some ways not productive, because it's more about me. Who am I? What am I doing? And as Tammy said, I can know everything. I could show you a complete movie of your entire life, every moment that happened, and you would still go out and see sex workers or, fool around with porn all the time, because that doesn't teach you how to stop. I mean, one of the things we do at Seeking Integrity, every guy comes in and says, why? And as Tammy said, I say, how? How do you get into recovery? How do you understand what's happened? How do you begin to have empathy for your family, and actually teaching step by step what needs to be done? I will say this, there is a reason for the why. And I think it's an important one, because there are two kinds of why. One is I'm a terrible, terrible person and I don't deserve to be on this earth. And the other is I'm a really broken person who's made a lot of mistakes. And if you can look a little bit at the why and understand what you went through, it's easier to understand that you're a broken person who really didn't mean to hurt people, but you were so hurt yourself and so broken. And that I can fix and help broken people. But many folks go into shame, which is, I hate myself, I'm an awful person. The why is unknown. So I'm just a bad person and I hurt people and I can't help bad people. But I'll tell you, I haven't seen a lot of people come to treatment who are, maybe a couple in the last 5 years at the treatment center, who are bad people. If they do, we let them know. But most of them come in hating themselves because of what they've done, which is a narcissistic kind of obsession. Poor me, I'm so awful, I. But moving to the how is much more important. I did say one more thing, which is, if I were your spouse, the last thing I would want is you running after me like a puppy. Did I do good? Didn't I? She does not like the fact that you were looking for her validation in any way while she is furious at you. She's the last person you should be bothering to get something from, or I'll feel better if you show this big smile. Do your work, and maybe that smile will come around because of the way you're acting, not when you're looking to find it.
Yes, I agree with that. Okay, next one. How can I tell family and friends we are splitting up?
Sorry,
How can I
what
tell
time? What's
family
the
and
timestamp?
friends? It's on under the
Oh,
answered. I
okay,
moved
got
it
it.
into answer. Yeah. How can I tell family and friends we are splitting up?
Why don't you start, Tammy? And there's so many. I assume it's related to sex addiction, related to
Yeah.
cheating.
And they don't need to know the behind the scenes. So it's like, we, we, we have come to an impasse. We don't see a future together. We've chosen to go separate ways. I mean, you can, you know, you can be kind, you can be, I'm dumping the, a-hole. I don't, I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's like one of those, the whys kind of goes back to, on some level, it doesn't matter. And nobody needs to know all of the underlying things, you guys know, and it's okay to just go, I would appreciate support, or I would appreciate, I need some time to process whatever it is that you need. You can ask for that, but we've made a decision to separate, and we don't even have the timing on how long this process will take, but this is what we've chosen for ourselves. I hope you'll respect our respect us at this time. Enough said. That's my thought. What are yours?
Well, I was just thinking about going to divorce court. And when the judge says, well, why are you, this couple is divorcing because, they don't say because he's a sex addict and she's a betrayed partner, and they're breaking up because he's been having affairs and seeing sex workers. And they say they're breaking up because of I put this up, irreconcilable
Irreconcilable
differences.
differences. Yeah.
That's a
Yeah.
great way of saying, it's like we just came to a point where we could not see each other anymore. And we felt that we'd been less pain and have a happier family. If you have kids, just know that we are there for each other, co-parenting. I think people want to know, or they will gossip about, if you become really openly angry at each other. You may feel that way, and I'm not asking you to spend evenings together, but I think dragging other people in just to say it, like, I can't believe what he or she did, is going to make your life more difficult, because people talk. And then before you know it, and maybe one of those friends knows what happened. And so the better the two of you can find some peaceful way. And I want to say to the spouses, if you're not going to be together, why hate them? I mean, move on with your life, regret what's happened, and look back at the good parts. I mean, when one of my parents died, I didn't say, well, let me remember one more time all the terrible things they did. I just thought of how grateful I was that they could give what they gave. And I think if you're divorcing, or you have kids and you're divorcing, you have to put on your big adult pants and kind of try to treat your ex with dignity.
I agree. Been there, done that. But yeah, I
Check.
mean, it is hard, so, but I needed to live in my integrity, and I needed to not
Right.
make things worse. And I did have a child involved, so I wanted to make sure that I was setting things up, to move forward, and friends chose, and that's all okay. Like that was not my stuff. That was theirs. So you did
By the
this.
way, I was just going to say, you can share your feelings.
Hmm.
There's a great way to say it. Share your
Hmm.
feelings. I've been unhappy. I've been frustrated. I've been sad. I've been angry. But don't share the content. Don't share the facts. You can just say there's a lot of unhappiness. You can talk about your feelings. No one can question them. I'm sorry. But if you say, well, this happened and that happened. By the way, I played telephone when I was a kid. I loved playing telephone, by the way, Tammy. I really did. Because the thing you said, by the time I was halfway around the circle, it was nothing like what had started. And believe me, you're just like that as an adult. So
Hmm.
yeah,
Yes,
but I'm
and
not
it's
saying don't get
misinformation,
support.
right? But yeah, there's all kinds of misinformation that doesn't ultimately help either of you,
Right.
to be able to move
Within
forward. So,
3 weeks, someone's going to say, oh, he's a sex offender and I don't want his kids over. I mean, you
hmm.
just
Hmm.
be careful. Okay.
My PA husband has been doing great in recovery for almost 2 years. He recently suggested adding more cloud space to his phone. I told him I don't think it is a good idea and he should print the pictures off his phone to free up more space. Instead, he did it anyway, and I am furious. I told him I was very triggered by this and he doesn't understand why. He basically told me I'm overreacting and need help. Oof. I reminded him he is the reason I am triggered over this. Any suggestions?
Well, first of all, if anybody really wants to understand without having to read a magazine or watch it on TV, the word gaslighting, this is an extraordinarily good example, which is, I'm triggered by this. I'm angry. This really upsets me. And there's a perfectly good reason for it. And the other person, to avoid the conflict or to hide behind whatever it is, and they say, no, 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 you're just overreacting. And you're not overreacting. Or why are you making such a big deal out of this? Or whatever it does to push it back on you and make you feel like you were bad for, feeling upset about something. I trust you spouses. The degree of upset you express sometimes cannot be great, but the fact that you have it, absolutely. So what I would be furious about in this situation, I'm going to turn it over to Tammy, is not, my part would not be about the cloud, or, I honestly, just with all the writing and the presentations, and I often need more space. It doesn't necessarily have to do with that. I like to take my pictures off because they take a lot of space, and all my pictures are in the cloud. So if my computer melts down, I still have them. So, that part I can understand, may not be related to his acting out. But the part I would not like and give me a bitter taste is that you asked him not to, and he did it anyway, because that makes us think, well, if they're doing things that they're not telling me about, that I specifically asked them not to do, then all trust is gone. How do I know what else is going on that you're not telling me about? So I'll say this quickly. This goes back to the podcast that I did with Dr. Stan Katkin. I think it's called We Do, which is about decisions that I make in life. This is a perfect example of, when I make a decision, the first thing I look to answer that decision is what is best for us? What is best for us? And this is the exact opposite. He asked what was best for us, and you told him, which means that and he said, well, forget that. I'm just going to go back to doing what's best for me. And that will never go well, as you can see. Anything to add, Tammy?
Well, the thing I would absolutely be, hopefully you have access to his cloud, that you have the
You can
password, because
ask.
I would, yeah, honestly, I would be going, this has violated my trust in you, and therefore, my healthy boundary is, healthy boundaries are for your safety, and I feel that I'm not safe with this. He's done this even though he knew I would be triggered, and like Dr. Rob said, gaslighting all over the place. So,
Mhm.
like, let's sit down and go through your photos, and we can decide if, how best to process this. So, I have a photo frame sitting right here that holds thousands of images. If they're great photos that you need to have, guess what? You can have them in a public place where you can both see them. That would be another practical solution. So, okay, next one. It's been over a year since D-Day, and I'm unsure how to deal with things. I left the house for a year to give her a safe space. I have been attending SLAA groups as well as a therapist and these and other podcasts. I also have completed a polygraph. My wife is still unsure she wants to even try to rebuild the relationship. She still uses words and terms like ruined my life, destroyed me, works is in the ruins on a regular basis. How do I help her move? Um, how do I help her more than I am? She is in therapy for complex trauma. Is it too early for her, or I even to know if this relationship is salvageable, and should we be doing anything more?
Well, what I hear here is your unhappiness. You know, none of us want to understand how much we've pushed someone away by doing our own work and learning about that and not being able to bring them back in. We can have all the empathy in the world, give her a safe space, understand what she's going through. I mean, those are really nice things, recovering yourself, taking the polygraph if that was important. But um, but first of all, this sounds a little bit like the last question, because my hope is you didn't do any of that for her. This isn't exactly, we say, if you're a 12 stepper, you will understand this. We say never make your wife or your husband or your lover your higher power. So if I am doing this, it is not for them. It is not for the partner. I'm doing it for me. And my hope is that if I do this, not only will I be better, but our relationship may get better. But you did ruin her life. You did destroy her. Her world is in ruins. And, if and so as I said before, I would leave her alone, go live your life, do what you need to do. But if you're really, really doing well, you need to think ahead. It's been a year. I guess I can say this. I think at a year, if you're really, really on the right road, maybe you take the out of doghouse course. I don't know. But you have a right to say, I've been working really hard on myself and I love you. And I understand, that you're going through this, and understandably, I understand I betrayed you, but I need to look to my future. And I wanted to understand, should I take a vacation by myself, or are you going to come with me? I'm going to go visit my family. Are you going to come at the holidays, or you're not? In other words, when it gets to the point where you're really doing well, and it is appropriate to say, where are we going to be in 6 months? If you get that, well, I don't know, ask me in 6 months, at a certain point, you're going to have to look at, well, and you notice I don't finish my sentences and I go on to the next one. That's not good. I think it's around the year mark when a couple has been separated that they're either going to need to look toward how they would move back together or not. And by the way, can you go to therapy together? Can you go to dinner together? Can you go to a movie? Can you spend time that is not stressful and just fun, or go to a safe place to talk to each other? Because at some point, even if you're not ready to be together, you have to be rebuilding the relationship. You may not end up staying together anyway, but how is she going to find out the degree of trauma, how she can manage this, all of that, unless at a certain point you're together? So I completely respect, this is not about her or what she's going through or her decisions, but there is a very healthy need to say, how do I move forward? And the vacation thing, yes, you can go to recovering friends, but I want to go on a vacation with my wife. Um, do you think that will ever happen again? I mean, I think that's sad, but reasonable. So, Tammy, am I going too far?
No, I was thinking similarly that I'm always disconcerted when I hear we've been separated for a year and I don't hear a plan, that this is what I'm looking for, in order to move together or, separate. Like, yeah, I mean, you're in the middle, you're kind of stuck. Both of you are kind of stuck. And I don't know how much, like I hear you doing the work. That's great. I hear she's going to some therapy for complex trauma. Betrayal trauma, great. That's helpful. But what I don't hear is the two of you navigating, like that you're spending, like Dr. Rob said, are you going out for coffee? How are you communicating? Is it like, what is the plan that at every period of time, these are the things that we're looking for to show that we're moving forward in a different way. I mean, I've heard people that are, separated for years, like, 3 years, and they're still separated and there's no plan and they're stuck. So I think it's really fair, like Dr. Rob said, to have, the ability to plan your life regardless. I'm finding, so Gavin Sharp did a webinar on everybody needs healthy boundaries. This includes addicts. So there's a link to it. Because it is, we all need, we all need healthy boundaries for us. So if your boundary is, I want to know if I'm going to be in a long-term relationship, then I need to set up the parameters of how we can, decide if this is going to work or not. So the opposite
And
of love is not hate. The opposite of love is indifference. And that is true.
it's one of my
So,
favorite statements, and I made it up, so maybe that's why I like it so much. But when I hear people say, "Oh, they hate me and they're so angry and they want to throw rocks," I think, well, good, they're still in the game, because I don't think the opposite of love is hate, but I think hate, because think hate is passionate. The
mhm,
other side of hate, by the way, is hurt. If you look underneath hate, it's hurt and sadness. That's why getting angry makes me feel stronger. So
mhm.
the opposite of love is not hate, because I'm still in the game with you. But once I'm indifferent, really, I love you, but I'm not sure I want to stay together. And, I've got to be with, when you don't hear that connection, even the connection you're hearing isn't the one you want to hear, if it's powerful and emotional, they're still in the game. And if they become indifferent, whoever that is, well, I'm not sure if I want to, that's when I would start to think, wow, this relationship is moving to an end. You cannot push her through her trauma. She has to go through that. She may feel like, oh, and you may get back. You're demanding things of me when I can't give them, and that just increases my trauma. And you need to, well, that may be true, but you're human. You have needs and wants. You get to say, this is what I want and this is what I need. If she can do it, great. She doesn't want to do it, great. But this is the other side of gaslighting. There's nothing wrong with you saying, these are my needs. Tell me how they can be met together or not. That's actually healthy. So I think you're asking the right questions. I think the execution is, the slippery part.
Yeah. And hopefully, I mean, if she's got a support therapist, perhaps you schedule a session for your therapist and her therapist and the two of you, to try to navigate, how do we move forward in a different way. So, okay. So the next question, I live paycheck to paycheck and it would be hard for me to pay for seeing a CSAT regularly. What information can I only get from a CSAT that is I can't get elsewhere? Why would I need to go to a CSAT if I can get recovery by going through a 12-step program and reading literature, like a few people I have seen who have been years of sobriety for doing a 12-step and have also been restored to their spouse?
Well, this is something that my business partner Tammy and my other business partner talked about as we were starting our beginning of our work. And one of the things we agreed is that we wanted to give some things away. And the reason we wanted to give as much away as we could, education, support, information, whatever that was, is because we know that the majority of you either can't afford or aren't going to make it to treatment or therapy. And the people that you see may not know anything about this. So there, alcoholics were never required to go to therapy in order to get well. You work your butt off in a 12-step program. And not only the part about what you do in that room, but helping others, getting sponsored, being a part of groups and fellowships, and really diving into that community the more you can. I'm a CSAT. You have a question? Feel free to ask. Most of my staff are CSAT or CSAT trained or in training. Write us, ask Tammy questions. I think the problem is more seeing a therapist doesn't know what they're doing. So it isn't so much that y'all have to see a CSAT, but if you're wanting to manage betrayal trauma, if you're wanting to manage disclosure, if you're wanting to manage stopping an addiction, you're kind of, most therapists will be very helpful and warm and supportive, but they don't know those technical things, how to do that. And that's why I trained for CSAT. That's why CSAT exists, is so that there are some people who just know what they're doing. So if you said to me, I'm going to therapy, but maybe I should get a therapist, it's a CSAT, what do you think? We'd be having a different conversation. But if you said, I can't afford to pay, CSATs are expensive. We are incredibly well trained. So my bottom line is, I typed in our website because there are what, how many, 14 free groups that therapists moderate?
At at least, yeah.
There are hundreds of these talks with Tammy. There are hundreds of podcasts I've done. There are a gazillion articles, tests. We have support groups, multiple times a week, and webinars. And, what I would do is educate yourself, jump into it, listen to everything you can. We have a podcast, right? Sex, Love, and Addiction. Whenever you drive around, listen to it. I hear it's really helpful to people. We don't get paid. That's not why we're doing it, because we wanted to give away as much as possible. So no, you do not have to work with a CSAT, but I would not necessarily work with just a regular therapist until I got my recovery going. Some therapists will say, oh, no, there's no sex addiction. You're just like a lot of sex, or maybe you didn't like your partner. You just need to be with someone else. And, it's because they don't know and they don't understand. They're not trained. So, uh, why would I need to go to a CSAT if I can get recovery? I will say that part. I'm going to cut Tammy off probably, but because of our training, we're able to look at some of the whys. We're able to help negotiate issues with you and your partner, or you and dating, or, there's a higher level of personal focus. This is kind of silly, but I could take an exercise class on YouTube and I would get fit and I would follow it, and I could take the advanced class, but that's not the same as going to a gym and having a one-on-one trainer where they can be with me and have a relationship with you and know where I'm strong and know where I'm not. And I kind of like that metaphor, because either way, you're getting what you need, but you may not be getting it in such an intense, focused, and personal way. But you can get there for sure. Tammy?
Yeah, I tell people the same thing. So, it's just, it's the journey you're on. So, just so you're clear, you don't go through a 12-step program and then you're magically all better. It's like, I still go to 12-step. I've been doing this for decades and I still go to 12-step, and I still learn new things. I do my dailies I do them every day because this is a chronic condition. And so it isn't like, well, if I just go through the 12-step, or if I just go sit in meetings, so if you really do the program, I mentioned earlier, steps 4 through 9 are the meat of the program. It's where you do the heavy lifting. If you do that and make a commitment, and I'd make a commitment to be doing that in the 90 meetings in 90 days. I will also share my struggle with the S groups. Is that it's harder to find long-term recovery, people that have solid recovery. So you're going to have to search harder for the solid recovery, in S groups. Find a sponsor who is actually doing the steps, is actually in recovery, and not, acting out every few months and going, oh, well, I had a slip, so you want the good quality sobriety. We have, as Dr. Rob mentioned, we've got free drop-in groups that are moderated by people, so that they're a safe space. Lean into those. You're here. Fantastic. Dr. Rob's podcast, Sex, Love, and Addiction, has had nearly 1.2 million downloads. There's great information. But even with all the great information, you can read all. Yeah, I've said so many times, if an addict could read a book and then be magically fixed, we'd all read a book and be done.
I have a
It's
wand.
about, yeah, I know. I want one of those too. But the opposite of addiction is also healthy attachment. So getting into connection with as many peer support people. There was a great podcast. There was a great webinar on accountability. Debbie McRae did it. Email me, Tammy, TAMI at Seeking Integrity, if you want that specific one, but it's on our website too. But I think it was either 10 or 12. I think it was 12 points of accountability, how you're being accountable. So you can do it, the 90 meetings in 90 days, at least, double it up. The more you lean in, on those things, the stronger program. But I know lots of people who have gone, I mean, I know lots of people that have warmed a chair at 12-step and they've stayed abstinent, but they haven't really gotten recovery. So you can, but I know lots of people that go to CSAT therapists and lie. They're paying them and they continue to
No,
lie. So it really is, what is your willingness to do this differently? If you really lean into it, you will figure out how to, to be on a very different path, regardless of, whether you paid for the support or not. So,
I was going to add one more thing, which is,
okay.
oh no, actually, I was actually focused on the next question. I was
Okay.
getting to
Can
that.
it
So
be
sorry.
co-person? I'm not quite sure what that means. Erotic rage when it is acted out on fantasy online with chat rooms, porn, webcams, when it takes the form of not in person voyeurism, exhibitionism, S&M,
Mhm.
etc. Will it escalate to in person? So will, if I'm watching this online
Mhm.
in fantasy, escalate to acting out in person?
Um, what my understanding of most of people who engage in a lot of behaviors that they feel uncomfortable with, or they've learned, like fetishes, things that they saw online that they didn't know they enjoyed, or they found and they thought it was interesting. That might be exhibitionistic porn. That might be, as you said, S&M type porn. Lots of people look at that. But that doesn't mean they're going to go out and do it in the world. And I think the statistics are fairly low, meaning if you already go out in the world and voyeur people, if you already exhibit yourself, if you are already out there in S&M situations, then looking at that kind of porn will probably escalate it or make you do it more, or you'll find out new things that you didn't know about and you go out and do those. But if you have no history of engaging in those behaviors, it is much less likely that you're going to go out there and actually do them. That's really true. What I also hear is, and this is, Tammy, when all the sex addiction people don't understand that there's more to sex than addiction. I don't know whether you are simply enjoying your sex life and this is what turns you on. As we just talked about recently, I'm not pro porn. I'm not against porn. I'm not pro alcohol or against alcohol. I'm not pro gambling or against gambling. It's all about the person and their situation and what they can manage and what they can handle. I'm against someone destroying their life because of alcohol or because of sexual behavior. But because you like wine or beer, that's none of my business. So if you enjoy looking at certain kinds of images and it's not illegal, and it may be shameful or uncomfortable, but it fits into what turns you on. I never go, if you like drinking on a regular basis, but it's never been a problem for you, have a glass of wine in the evening, it's not my job to judge. So there are two questions here, Tammy, I think, which is one, well, there's three. One, is there some kind of addiction or compulsion? Two, am I acting out my behavior could have rage? And number three, is it okay to want to look at these things, or does that mean I'm going to go out and do them? Do you have any thoughts about those?
Well,
Unless
I
you got another
mean,
one.
no, no, it's one of those things where, people are always afraid that if somebody's looking, I'm going to use an illegal, like, looking at child porn, that they're automatically going to go to touch, and that it's still illegal. I'm not in
We're
any
not
way condoning
promoting
it. Yeah, yeah.
child
No, I'm
porn,
just saying, people
but
go, oh, he looked at, child porn, so therefore he's going to go, I have to protect my children because he's going to, hurt them. I haven't seen any research that shows that
well, the
that is the case.
percentage, why don't I jump on that just to make it more
Thank you.
comfortable, Tammy? There's a lot of research, there's a lot of fear that people who look at underage porn are going to go do that, touch them, and that the viewing of it is kind of a training or a practice, or it drives them to escalate. And that's why there's such long prison sentences for looking at child porn. I mean, I'm not, again, I'm not promoting it, I'm not supporting it. I feel for the families, the children, it is not okay. And you can, if you're in prison, federal prison, for looking at child porn, you get more time than you do for attempted murder, for rape, so And the reason for that is that there's this idea in the culture that if I'm looking at it, I'm going to touch. But when you look at the statistics, it's really fascinating because, and you can look this up. There's a gentleman, if you want to put it in the chat, Tammy, his name is Dr. Michael Seto,
Oh, yes.
Seto. And he wrote about a book called Internet Offenders. And in that book, he did a tremendous, Canada, tremendous amount of research on this particular topic. And with people who look at underage porn, the reality is the likelihood that they're going to go on and actually hurt a younger person if they've never done it is like 3%. So we have a whole population, and I think it extends to things like this, people who look at all kinds of things, legal and not legal, but that doesn't have anything to do with whether they're going to do it or not. Um, I don't know if I can say this right, but think of how many things in life you really wanted to do, but you knew that wasn't a good idea. It's not that dissimilar. People, just because people look at things that make them uncomfortable, make other people uncomfortable, doesn't mean they're completely out of control people who are just gonna, do things. Yeah. So this is a tough one, by the way, for this particular group of 46 people, because um, it's not my job to say whether porn is good or bad. It's not my job to say whether any addictive behavior or substance is good or bad. It's up to now they're using psychedelics for therapy. 20 years ago, 15, we would have said, oh my God, psychedelics are drug addicts. So it's not my job to judge. My job is to help the individual. If you want judgment, go into politics, go into sociology or history or medicine. You can judge what works and what doesn't. I'm not interested in how this affects the culture. I feel sad about it, but I'm not. What I'm interested in is, are you destroying your life or the lives of those around you? And so I can't tell you what this is for you, but I would suggest you ask more people. And I will say this also, when I ran in running a treatment center, when someone comes to seeking integrity and they say, I want to belong here, my wife told me to be here, whatever, I have to tell you my entire career, I have never run into someone in a treatment center who wasn't there for a reason. And the same reason that we did, whether I was doing individual therapy or group, when you walk into a sex addiction therapist's office, you have a problem. And otherwise you could go see, a regular therapist. So anyway, if this is bothering you, and so I really hope that you do find someone to bounce it off of, because we don't have very much information at all about you. And I don't want to see you do anything to hurt yourself or others. So I think you should probably just seek someone out, like a sponsor or a therapist, and say, I'm not sure what this means. Can you help me understand it?
Yeah, and I'd honestly go for a higher level of care, because the sponsors, it's experience, strength, and hope, and this one feels like there's a little bit more to it. So getting, qualified help. Email me, Tammy, TAMI at seekingintegrity.com. Let me know where you're located, and I'll do my best to help you. Okay, next question. We've got a bunch, so let's go through some more. I'm the betrayed wife. My husband is having a hard time admitting his flirting was consciously acting out.
Mhm.
He says it's just a nice guy who likes to give everyone compliments and wasn't looking for anything. He admits he won't do it in front of me. One, what is healthy compliment giving versus is what is flirting? Does the answer differ for an SA versus a non-SA? Is a heterosexual male SA in a monogamous relationship that is handing out compliments to women based on looks in active addiction?
Can you say something? Oh, are they in active addiction?
Yes. So
Well,
if it's a heterosexual male and
right.
yes, I just don't know if it's in his inner circle, or if that's I don't know.
Well, I don't know because we don't have enough information, but I can tell you this. If it does happen around you and makes you uncomfortable, why isn't your husband respecting that it makes you, I don't have to say to the
He's not
waitress,
doing it around her.
well, how does she know
He,
then? That's what
he Well, that's a good question, but he says he's just being a nice guy, and he
right, but
admits he
how does
won't
she
do it in
know?
front of me. Maybe the person, it doesn't matter.
Okay.
So just go with, yeah.
So, I compliment, I don't even know. I'm not sure how to, why don't you try and answer for this, Tammy?
So
well, okay, a
I
sex
have
addict.
I have strong feelings about this, because
Good.
yes, because I'm like, he doesn't do it in front of you. So he is absolutely doing this behind your back. So that is, the secrets and lies. So I don't know what his inner circle has, so I don't know if that falls into it or if that's just a middle circle behavior. It is not in the healthy things. And if he's doing it complimenting women based on looks, I'm sorry, that's extra creepy. It's got nothing to do, I mean, like if he was going, gosh, you're so smart, you know, because your brain is so amazing, that's different. But he's only doing it to women. He's not doing it to guys. Like this feels so, I trust your gut. To me, this is a problem, you know,
Hmm.
and he can go talk to his sponsor about this, and they can, you know, he can talk to his therapist. But if he's not comfortable doing it in front, like if he imagines you're always right there next to him, you know, and he's not willing to do it, then, you know, I mean, it's bad if he does it in front of you too, but to me, that's like, he knows he's timing this when you're not around. So
Well, I agree with Tammy for sure that you need to trust your gut. And if this feels uncomfortable, it probably is. And this doesn't feel, and it would not feel like recovery to me, especially the response. You know, well, I wouldn't do it in front of you. That's not a recovery response. Recovery response is tell me if you've seen me do that. What exactly are you talking about? You know, how can I learn from what you're saying? That's a recovery response. But don't worry about it especially I don't worry about it because I only hit on people when you're not around.
yeah,
That
he
just
says
doesn't.
he's just a nice guy that gives everyone compliments. But I was like, well, then
Okay.
you give everyone compliments, and it's not
Right.
just women, and it's not based on their looks, you know. So all, like,
And
there's so many, yeah.
no, I was just going to say, like, it's very nice. I try very hard I really try hard to the people who have life difficult, like the person behind the airline counter. I try
Yes,
really hard to say, I hope you're having a good day, and I know how hard this week is.
yes.
And when I go to the grocery store and they don't ring, I don't say, boy, you're really slow. Or even if they have been, I work really, really hard to say thank you, especially for the people who are out there struggling day to day, having to deal with the general public. We just deal with a troubled public. But that was a joke. But in any
No, but
case,
you're not, you're thanking them and being kind to them. You're not
it's
giving them,
important to me.
but you're not giving them nice guy compliments based on their looks if they're
No, no, I'm
attractive
not
to
done
you.
yet. I'm
Oh,
not
sorry.
done. That's okay.
I
I
told you
know
I felt
I
strongly on this
appreciate your
one.
passion. Um, so but here's the other part of it is that if I'm working on this in recovery and I can't, and trust me, in recovery, I can't differentiate, I don't think, when I'm saying to someone, wow, you did a great job, and really mean it for them, or whether I say, wow, you did a good job because I'm hoping they'll respond to me. I can say that the number one drug for sex addicts is attention. How can we get, oh, and maybe there's a better one, admiration. We want to be admired, we want to feel important, we want to feel special, and we're really going to be seductive. So believe me, I know how to flirt with both women and men in ways that I will get attention in a good way, although it's harder and harder as I get older. But here's the deal. He does not have to compliment. He does not have to do this. He can spend 3 months saying thank you and moving on because he needs to learn whether he's getting the attention from whomever. When you compliment people, they look up, they look you in the eye. He doesn't need to engage people at that level right now. He's in early recovery. Maybe when I had to take an abstinence period, I took about 90 days not having sex because my sponsor told me to. I learned to look down at the ground. I learned not to do this. I learned to wear that what I was wearing was about attracting people. I learned a whole bunch of things by not being able to be sexual for a period of time. Now, I didn't learn how to have a better relationship or how to date or how to integrate sex with my life, but I learned a lot about my healing. And I would ask this person, what would it be like if you just stopped looking for attention, if you just stopped trying to make people feel good and you just kept walking? Didn't look for this look, didn't look for the smile, didn't, I know what that's like. And it's very nice to do with people, unless you're a sex addict and you don't know your motivation. And he may be right. He does it for some reason sometimes and some reason for others, but he doesn't understand it. And the way he will understand it, it's by, first of all, listening to you. And second of all, just stopping. I'm not going to give anyone a compliment. I'm going to smile and say thank you, and I'm going to move on. And let's see what that's like for him when he's not able to generate the extra attention for whatever reason. Um, that was a hard answer to give. I had to like work my way through that. I wasn't sure what to say.
Yeah, well, it is challenging. So, but yeah, trust your gut. Okay, next question. My husband is finally working on recovery and consistently seeing his CSAT on part 2 of Sex Addiction 101. signing up for part 3, but we are in the middle of the 90-day sobriety, no sex, etc., before doing his therapeutic disclosure. He keeps saying he wants his wife back and wants things back to normal, and he's ready to just tell me everything. This attitude is just pushing me
Ooh.
away. I feel he just wants sexual intimacy, affection, and I don't even want to be close because I don't know what I don't know.
Well, the first thing I want to say to you is I would really not want this person in my bed every night. Sex, I mean, I mean, forget about sex. Like, I would not want this person in my bed. What would it be like to just take some time apart within? I know people who take apart time within their own homes. So, and by the way, normal was I act out and I don't tell you. You are sweet and wonderful to me because we have a great relationship because there's so much you don't know about. And I want to have a relationship where I have control, and then I can kind of work you into loving me. And as long as you don't know about this, and I can get what I want over there. That's not there is a new normal. The new normal is he is in the doghouse and he doesn't get to decide when you're affectionate, when you're caring, how he gets. It's not that he doesn't deserve it, or he's a bad guy. But again, this idea that I want you to be different so I can feel better, that's not recovery. That's trying to, like we said before, that's making you the cause, you the solution to the problem. If she'll just be nicer to me, I don't have to do all this stuff. So, and as far as the attitude pushing you away, I think you should trust that and turn it physical. If you feel like pushing someone away, they don't necessarily belong in your bed. They don't necessarily need to be going out with you or spending time with you, or you can focus on yourself and your own healing. Trust. This is pushing me away. Trust that. I think he wants sex. Trust that. I don't even want to be close. Trust that. All of this is perfectly healthy in terms of the process that you're in. I am glad he's taking courses. I'm glad he's in therapy. I don't see anything about 12-step meetings. I sure hope he's going. But if he went to see me and he said, I want my spouse to be normal, number one, I would say there's a new normal and you signed up for it years ago when you did this. And number two, I would say stop looking at her and look in the mirror. Worry about what's going on there, and let her find her own new normal. If he wants things to be as they were, they will never be as they were. You will never look at him and innately trust him when he walks off the door. You never will. Your relationship may be better. It may change. It may be more intimate, but that naive sense of you would never hurt me, which may have been normal before, that you will always be mistrustful. And that's, I mean, to different degrees, but there is no going back to normal.
Yeah, that's what I was like. First, what is normal? But yeah, this feels manipulative. He wants his wife back. I was like, I want, a husband of integrity. We don't always get what we want, but I really, like Dr. Rob said, trust your gut, hold the space. He is very early in this process, very early. I mean, 90 days, there's so much more work to do. But I would be abundantly clear with him is we can never wind things back to the way they were. Eyes wide open, we can find a new path. I did pop the podcast We Do with Dr. Stan Tatkin in the chat. This is what we can strive for. This is what we can work for. But he's got to do the lion's share of the work. He's the one that has to change. So like Dr. Rob said, he's seeing a CSAT once a week, and he's doing our work groups once a week. I don't hear anything else, so that would not be enough to combat things that are decades old. So 12-step, our drop-in groups, like the more he leans into that, the more he'll start to change. But this is, that is that's a big misstep in his, trying to build a bridge to you. So hold
Please be the
your
way I want
healthy
you to
boundary.
be.
Yeah. I want to go back to normal. Like, it was great
That's
back then. We
just
didn't have to worry about any of this. Like,
right.
you're mad at me now, and you weren't mad at me because you didn't
Right.
know
I
what
liked
was
it
going
better.
on. I was lying
That's
to you.
right.
So yeah.
And
Oh
we don't mean to be mean to the addicts. It's just some of the
no,
shit
no.
that comes out of your
Yeah.
mouth. And
Yeah,
I
but
am
and
one,
it's
so I get it.
yeah, no, it's early in recovery. It's like the more like the person that talked about, like, I have no money. Okay. The more you lean into, and there's lots of free stuff, the more you lean in, the more you do the work, the more you're going to get out of it. I mentioned I go to 12-step meetings. You know what? I read the same stuff that I've been reading for decades. You know what? I can still pick up something, or I go, oh, I forgot about that. Like, we never graduate from this. I want to die in recovery. And so I'm willing to do the work so that I can continue to grow. So we're way out of time. And there's a whole bunch more questions, and I'm sorry we won't get to them. But anyway, so come back next week. We'll have more.
And by the way,
Thank
these
you
are
all.
great questions. I
Mhm.
hope you realize, and I hope that you're getting what you need. I just want to say briefly that the question beneath it, because I appreciate your writing, the question beneath it, we're not going to have time to answer, is someone who went to a number of our groups, and they're saying, how do I take a next step? They went to Sex Addiction 101, then they went to Out of the Doghouse. That's the right order. And now they're saying, they're running into deeper issues, and when is the right time? And the reason I'm saying this to you is Tammy wrote them back. And she said, why don't you talk to this staff member who because you took their course, and anyone who takes the course can talk to that person. They can set up an individual session, they can do whatever, but our door doesn't close. And I really love that you wrote that, Tammy. It wasn't like read this book, or it was like you're in touch with the people who educated you in that course. Reach back out to them and see what they think.
Yeah,
We're not the
because they
ultimate
know
word.
you, and we're just going to read this and go, well, here's some thoughts, but they know you. They can help guide you, specifically in your situation. So anyway.
Bye, Tammy.
Okay, bye.
Good to
Talk to you
see ya.
later. Bye,
Bye,
everybody.
folks.
Come back.